Welcome to GoPowerCat.com's Friday walkthrough, sponsored by Riverbank Brewing. Now, let's head into the studio.
Hey everyone, and welcome in here to the Friday walkthrough. I'm Cole Carmody, and for the third season, we are back. With me, as always, former Kansas State defensive back, Monty Spiller. Monty, I cannot believe it's our third year doing this. We've seen a lot of football games, man. It's football season. I'm so happy we're back.
Yeah, man, first of all, it's good to be back with you. I really enjoyed doing this with you. I'm glad we can be back for a third year. But, yeah, you're right. Watching football last week, I was watching the Georgia Tech Florida State game. You know, it was a great game, first of all, and that just got my juices and my blood flowing, and I'm ready to roll, man. It's football season.
It is football season. And surprisingly, in Kansas, it's different this year because you and I are both coaches now. Well, typically high school football opens up on the same weekend as college football. This year it's a little different. Kansas opens up their high school season a year after. So all the coaches are not only dealing with that, but they're also dealing with the 100-degree heat, just like everybody else is right now. I can imagine for the players in Manhattan, it has to be rough. But when you have an indoor like that, it's probably a little bit easier than when you were there, huh?
Absolutely, man. You know, it's one of those things. Talking about high school, I know we as a staff and as administration and as parents, we've been practicing at 6 a.m. the last 3 days to kind of beat the heat, which I'm thankful for also. And I know the kids are too. But, yeah, it's a little bit different, man. That heat is something wicked, and I'm kind of curious to see how K-State will adjust to it and be ready for that.
And hopefully the weather looks like it's going to break. So if you're on your way to the game right now, listening to this, or if you are planning on coming down on Saturday, the weather looks like it should be in the high 80s. So that's better than the alternative, which is the high 90s, because, I honestly don't know what they do. I don't know if there's ever been a game canceled due to heat. Maybe they start the game at 9 o'clock at night. I don't know. But hopefully we don't have to worry about that because the weather will break up a little bit. We'll have plenty of time to get into that. Get into that game here in the second half. Before we get going, we want to send a huge shout out to our brand new sponsor, Riverbank Brewing in Council Grove. Really cool that they're doing that. It's a really cool place. If you hadn't had a chance, definitely make sure you go check it out. Monty, let's kind of preview this season because there's so much talk around this year, and this feels like one of the more hyped K-State football seasons that we've had in a really long time.
Man, you're right. First of all, with so many dynamic players returning, so many dynamic players new to the program. I wouldn't call it guys no-name guys, but guys who we've known about stepping up and taking position of guys who have left, who are quality, if not better, also. And the schedule and itself with the new Big 12 conference, so much going on. I'm excited. Some guy in the New York Times predicted Avery to be a potential Heisman candidate, which is great, but there's so much going on right now. Where do you start? Start?
Yeah, well, we're going to try and start somewhere. We'll just start at the quarterback position because you brought it up. Somebody asked Avery at his press conference this week. They said, Avery, what do you feel like you have to prove? And he was like, nothing. Like, I have nothing to prove. And which is crazy because the kid has started one game at quarterback. And, that should come as a surprise to no one who's seen him or been around him because this guy is as cool as ice. And as Fitz has talked about many times here at Go Power Cat, he is the adult when he steps into the room. Well, he's going to be an adult on the field on Saturday. That guy has a chance to have a really special season. And with this brand new offense that K-State's installing with Connor Riley and Matt Wells as co-offensive coordinators, to me, that's one of the biggest storylines of this season.
Yeah, I agree. There are a lot of guys out there that are special, and you've heard it before. And there are just some guys who have it. And he has it, no doubts about it. The way he carries himself, the way he's a leader, the way his teammates migrate towards him, and the way he carries himself on and off the field. He has everything in the making to be one of the best quarterbacks in K-State history, if not the best. I'm excited for him. I'm not crowding him yet, but the potential is definitely there.
No doubt about it. And joining him this offseason, I think maybe storyline number 2 is his childhood buddy, Dylan Edwards, coming from Colorado. And, the story of Dylan's an interesting one because I think this is a kid who was pretty misunderstood by a lot of fans. And, he had obviously committed to Kansas State, commits to Notre Dame, decommits from Notre Dame, signs with Colorado, and then realizes, I think K-State's where I was meant to be. And sure enough, he's back. He's back with Avery, who they played Little League with, which I always can just sit back and laugh because could you imagine being a kid on the other side trying to stop probably two of the fastest players to ever come out of Wichita on the same team? Yet, forget being a dad, coach on the other side, telling your son, "Hey, you got to tackle this guy," and kids crying, "They're just better than us." Like that's what happened, and that might happen on Saturday. I'm not going to sit here and say that's not, because UT Martin might go home crying because Dylan Edwards and Avery Johnson back in the same backfield together is going to be very special. I'm really excited to see what Dylan can do this year.
Yeah, I'm with you. You know, we saw what he could do at Colorado, and following him throughout his high school career at Derby High School, he's done a phenomenal job. And there's no question about if he has the ability. The question is how they use him. And, I think Coach Riley and Coach Wells will do a great job of setting them up, putting them in a position to basically take advantage of whoever UT Martin puts on them. And the point that the fact that Avery is a dual threat quarterback, you know what, you have to figure something out. Who you want to stop? Avery? Do you want to stop Dylan, or do you want to stop DJ? It's your choice. But the speed in that backfield and the power and the big play power is. I don't know if K-State's ever had a trio or a duo, for that matter, like that in a long time.
Yeah, and DJ Giddens has a chance to be one of the best running backs in Big 12. I think Avery Johnson said that at his press conference as well. Talking specifically about Connor Riley and Matt Wells, this is what I want to ask you. I mean, I know that at K-State when you played, there were some really, really good coaches, and a lot of those coaches ended up being head coaches or going on and being coordinators somewhere. Throughout your time at K-State, I honestly, did you have a coordinator change? I feel like we've talked about this before.
Yeah, I did. My redshirt year and redshirt freshman year, my DC was Bob Stoops, and a lot of people know. If you don't know Bob Stoops, you don't know college football. Yeah. He left K-State after my second year to go on to be the DC at Florida, which Steve Spurrier put him away. I can't be mad at him about that. He threw big money at him, and Florida was a defense away from a national championship because Nebraska showed Florida how to play some football. And then when they got Bob, and next year they won the championship, and then Bob got the head job at Oklahoma, and the rest of that is history for sure. I had him. I had Coach Cope, who was there for a half a season. Unfortunately, he passed away from cancer. And then Mike Stoops was a DC as well. So I've had some good DCs, and I had co-D coordinators. Jim Levitt was there with Coach Stoops also. So I've had some good ones.
So when you had those coordinator changes, I mean, this is what those guys are going through. The head guy stays the same. And, very similar to what's going on. Chris Kleinman's a defensive-minded head coach. Bill Snyder, an offensive-minded head coach, kind of just lets those guys take control of the defense. As a player, when you have a coordinator change like that, I mean, they're not making wholesale changes, but inevitably there will be things that change. Did it take you kind of a while to get used to that? And would you maybe expect to see the same thing this year?
It did. And it was one of those things, certain coach, and like I've said before, certain coaches may not admit it, but they like a certain type of player for a certain type of style of football they play. And that's just part of the process. And I get that too. And it does take a while to adjust. But I think with K-State, the good news is our star players, our studs, coordinators coming in, Coach Riley being here, knowing the guys, and then Coach Wells kind of seeing on the outside looking in what we have. It's not a whole lot of change going to need to happen. I think the biggest thing K-State has for them is the culture. And you got guys who want to be here. They will adjust to whatever the coaches want to do, and they will find a way to be successful.
Yeah, you wouldn't think terminology would change that much. I mean, Connor Riley, obviously the offensive line coach, still the offensive line coach. And so, everybody else besides Colin Klein remained on that offensive staff, which I think is a really underrated part of this offseason, was being able to keep your offensive assistants when your offensive coordinator leaves, because a lot of the times that doesn't happen. But it happened at K-State, and I think for the reasons you mentioned, Monty, the culture is a main part of that. We talked a little bit about it, but I'm super excited to see the depth this year. And we might get to see a little bit of that on Saturday, but the depth this year just seems to be greater than they've had in a really long time. You look at the running back position, you look at the offensive line position, a lot of guys maybe who are new faces but are able to play, sticking on the offensive side of the ball. I look at the receiver position, Monty, there's a lot of guys at that spot that can be really successful.
No, you're right. I had the opportunity to go to a practice about 2 weeks ago, and I was talking to some of the guys I know that are familiar with the program, and a few of the coaches that weren't active in their drills. And honestly, every position, even the backup quarterback position, is a battle. And like we have so much depth. You know, I was paying attention to the DBs, me being a former DB myself. They got 9 or 10 guys that can start for K-State or can start for other guys, and they're all battling. And as they're walking past me, they're good-looking kids. I'm like, and you can tell the weight program has made a difference. They're good, and they look like a Power 4, D1 top contender in school. And like I said, the depth is there. They're competing. The speed is there. The size is there. And that's at every position. So I'm anxious to see what happens. And kind of like we figured out with Coach Kleiman, he's not afraid to play multiple guys throughout the game, because if one guy goes down, the next guy comes in, and it's going to drop off. And he can be a freshman, no matter who it is, and he trusts him. So I'm excited for him.
Isn't it amazing, though? Because it seems like just a few years ago, K-State had those guys in the beginning of Chris Kleiman's era. You're like, oh, they're good football players. They know what they're doing. They're in the right spot. That's why they're winning games. They might not be the most athletic. They might not be the biggest. They might not be the strongest, but they know what to do. They're smart football players, and they're in the right spot. And now, just as you say, Monty, you look around the room and you're like, these guys are huge.
Yeah,
like they
got
the size, they got the speed, they got the strength, and they got the smarts. I think that says a lot about the recruiting. But like you mentioned, Drew Carroll, that strength development staff. I mean, that is not an easy job, and those guys are knocking it out of the park. So I think fans will see that this year is not only the depth, but just the size and the get off the bus. Like there's always those teams when they get off the bus, you're like, oh, they're intimidating. That's going to happen with other teams because K-State's going to get off the bus. And they're going to go, those guys are big dudes. So yeah, I think the depth and, just the size and everything all around is definitely going to show. I want to ask you about some guys to pop. Okay. So we're going to go through this. We're going to pick out some guys to pop. I'll ask you first, guy to pop on the offense. It can be a returner. It can be Avery Johnson. I really don't care. I know we've talked about him. Who was one guy you're looking at as a guy who's going to really pop off this season?
Well, it's a guy we talked about already, and it's kind of the obvious answer. And I played with his dad at K-State, and I remember practicing against him, and Leon Edwards was a great athlete, and he was behind some good backs too. He didn't get as much playing time, I think, as he would like, but he was a competitor, and when he got in, he made plays. But Dylan Edwards, man, is one of those things where I think he has a lot to prove, not to the nation, but just I think he wants to not necessarily verbally apologize to K-State Nation, but he wants to let them know, say, hey, when I didn't come, it wasn't about K-State. It was about what was going on with him personally and what was best for him and his family. And I respect that. I never held any grudges against him. When he chose to go to Colorado, I messaged his dad personally and said, hey, man, good luck. I'm praying for you guys. I want to see Dylan ball out. There was no animosity on my end. But now I think he's back. I think Dylan has a lot more to prove, and he wants to show the K-State Nation what he's about. And I think he's going to pop when he gets this opportunity. I'm excited to see him.
And that's going to be a guy who is just waiting in the wings because he's been waiting for this moment ever since he committed the first time. So yeah. I think that's a great answer. It's hard to follow that up, quite honestly, but I look at the receiver position. I mentioned it earlier, and I'm looking for one of those receivers. And I think Jace Brown's a good answer, but I'm going to say Keegan Johnson. I really think Keegan Johnson's going to have a really good year. I'm excited for what Tank can do because we listen to him talking in the offseason. You're like, this is just a different kid. And it's always that caveat. Can he stay healthy? And it's true with a lot of kids, but with Keegan, it's with him, it's just something that he's had that label for a while now. Can he stay healthy? I think he will. I think he's going to have a good year being that kind of over the middle target for Avery Johnson because you got Jace Brown as a deep threat. You got Dante Cephas, and then you got Keegan Johnson in the middle. So you say Dylan, I say Keegan. I say both of them are going to have really big years. On the defensive side of the ball here, as we wrap up the first half, guys to pop on the defensive side of the ball. I'll go first on this one just because you're going to pick a DB and I'm going to pick a DB too. I'm going to say Jacob Parrish. I have to pick Jacob Parrish because that's my guy. I've known him since he was in 6th grade. I think Jacob Parrish is going to have an outstanding season. He's gotten bigger. He said he was up to 200 pounds now. He's fast. He's got the potential to be an all Big 12 quarterback.
Yeah, I agree, and you took my answer, by the way. But I'm going to deviate from that a little bit and not really pick a specific person since you took my guy. I'm going to say the defensive ends. Okay. And the reason I'm watching those guys at practice, and we go back to size, speed, ability, there are several guys, 4 of them, and I was talking to Joe Hall for a little bit, and they walked past me, and Joe's a big guy, and they made Joe look little. And I was like, my goodness, those some big boys. And watching them working drills, their hand speed, their physicality, just their motors are going. So I'm gonna say a group. I'm looking out for the defensive ends.
I think that's a great answer too. There's going to be a lot of guys that play in that position group on Saturday. And the best part about that is when we come back from this break, you'll hear from our sponsor, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about Saturday. Kansas State, UT Martin getting ready to kick off the 2024 season. We're going to talk about that when we come back after this short break.
It's time to take a break for our sponsors. We'll be back with more from GoPowerCat.com.
Nestled in the heart of beautiful and historic Council Grove, Kansas, Riverbank Brewing is the perfect place to stop before or after the game. Riverbank Brewing, located in downtown Council Grove.
Now let's head back to the show for more K-State sports coverage from GoPowerCat.com.
Welcome back in here to the Friday walkthrough. Cole Carmody and Monty Spiller back for a third season. Kansas State and UT Martin getting set to kick things off Saturday night at the Bill, 6 o'clock. If you can't be there, it's on ESPN Plus. Lots of good games going on, but we sure hope that you'll be out in Manhattan. Like we talked about at the top of the show, the weather should be a little bit better than it is, hopefully, when you're watching this video. But maybe if you're watching this on Friday morning, it's probably going to be in the 60s or the 70s, because I think the high on Friday is 81, Monty. So let's pray that it stays that way. Looking at UT Martin as we kind of get into this game, not exactly an easy program to research. Let me just say, Tennessee, there's a lot of good football in Tennessee, but it's usually orange, and they're the Volunteers.
Yeah.
UT Martin is maybe not the most historic program in the state of Tennessee, shall we say. But I will say they are the favorite to win the Ohio Valley Conference. They were the leaders, or they were the preseason favorites to win that conference, Monty. So, I mean, you have to show them a little bit of respect. Like, this is a good team that's coming in here to Bill Snyder Family Stadium.
Absolutely. You know, you and I both know, and I'm not comparing them and liking them to North Dakota State, but you can't overlook any FCS school. And like, they play good football, and they have a bunch of guys who are probably FBS guys, but just didn't fit in a certain system, and they went to where, for whatever reason, and they come in with an attitude. You know what? K-State, Big 12, known name, you know, a quality program. We want to shock the world, and they're going to play loose. They're not going to have a lot of pressure on them, because honestly, nobody expects them to win. But it's Tennessee. Tennessee has good athletes. I'm pretty sure they recruit their state well, and the surrounding states also. So it's going to be a good game. I think we should win handily, because we have quality talent, but it's not going to be an easy, like a pushover game.
No doubt. It won't be. And, you know, by the time you're watching this, I'm curious to know what will have happened in the Colorado-North Dakota State game. As you mentioned, Monty, I'm going to be sitting on my couch locked and ready to go for that game. That's going to be a fun one. And on Saturday as well, Oklahoma State hosts South Dakota State, who's number 1 in the FCS poll. So there's a lot of really good FCS teams. You know, you look at week 0, Montana State, they beat New Mexico. And so you look at these FCS schools, I think the talent is rising at the FCS ranks, and they're not at the level of a Power 4 school by any imagination, but the gap is closing. And, you know, I look at this UT Martin team, and they are receiving votes in the FCS poll. I think they were the 4th team receiving votes. SEMO, who K-State played last year, was the favorite to win that conference. And I think they were like 16th in the poll. So, you know, maybe they came in with a little more preseason hype, but I think it's a very similar opponent. You're going to see very similar athletes. And SEMO had a lot of really good athletes. This UT Martin team, though, you mentioned it, Mike, they are not going to be scared. You look at their schedule, and it doesn't take a genius to see they went on the road to Athens, Georgia last year and played the Georgia Bulldogs. So they will not be intimidated coming into Manhattan.
Absolutely. And, you know, K-State has a great environment. I know it's opening day. People are going to be ready and pumped. But like you said, nothing against K-State, but Georgia is Georgia. You know, they are used to big-time football. And if you can go in Georgia, I don't care if they lost or not. The fact that they went there, competed, they're ready. You know, and they have guys that return. So they're going to be ready for it. So I hope K-State, and I know Coach Kleiman and his staff will have our boys ready also. And I'm pretty sure he's probably told them the same thing. Hey, listen, they're not going to be intimidated by us. They were in Athens, Georgia last year. Yeah. We're a great football community, but so is Athens, Georgia. So don't think they won't be ready. So I'm excited to see what happens.
I'm happy for K-State that they played this game week 1, because typically what happens when, take the SEC schools, for instance, you play these games at the end of the year, because now they only have 8 conference games where the Big 12 plays 9, but they play these random FCS games in the middle of the season. I've always been a little worried about that for those SEC schools, because that seems like a prime letdown opportunity. I think the combination of coming out to all the fans the first time you're playing in the season, it's the home opener, it's the season opener, it makes it a little bit easier to take those teams seriously.
Yeah, I agree. And also, if you look at it, just like us, we're young, not young, but we have some new pieces in place. They do too. And it's the first time for them playing as a team in a real game. It's one thing to scrimmage, but when you're actually on the road in a hostile environment, playing as a team for the first time, it takes a while to get things going, especially on the offense. So I'm hoping their offense isn't quite clicking yet, where they would be later in the season, and know each other and understand that. And hopefully our defense can get pressure on them and force them into some turnovers. We get up early and get young guys in to get some experience before we go on the road to play a good Tulane team the following week.
Yeah, that's going to be a great game. And we'll spend a lot of time on that next week. You mentioned their offense. It's an interesting thing for UT Martin, because quarterback by the name of Kincaid Dent, he is a senior, but he's an Ole Miss transfer. So he spent 3 seasons at Ole Miss and then played last year, put up really good numbers, 2,304 yards passing, 351 yards rushing with 28 total touchdowns. So this is a guy who's going to be a dual threat quarterback, more so of a guy who likes to hang back in the pocket and throw the ball. But I think this is going to be a good test for K-State, because this is the kind of teams you want to play. You're playing a talented quarterback. That's never a bad thing when you open the season.
I agree. And you and I both know we've been hyping up our secondary, but we have high expectations from those guys this year. A lot of guys play as young players last year, and guys got some experience on the fly. And both our corners are close to 200 pounds. They got bigger, faster, stronger. They communicate well, and we like to put pressure on people. So it'll be a good test for our secondary early to see what we're made of. And I'm happy that we get to see that too. And like you said, the quarterback from UT Martin, he's an Ole Miss guy, or a former Ole Miss guy. And people forget, just because a guy might be at an FCS school, you can only have one quarterback, one QB1 per school. And there are a lot of talented guys on roster that don't want to sit behind a quarterback for 4 years. Mm-hmm. So they transfer. And they could have started anywhere else, but a guy that was just as good as them was there before them, and then they get an opportunity. So they go to UT Martin and make their own name. So it'll be a great task for us come Saturday.
No doubt about it. And, talking about, K-State a little bit more here, what do you want to see? Because from me, obviously the big thing is get out healthy. Yeah. That's the number one thing that anybody wants in these these first games of the year, is you want to get out healthy. But I mean, there's a lot that could happen on Saturday with formations, with different personnel, with different play types, different schemes. What would it be? What would be a successful Saturday night? Take away, everyone staying healthy and winning, but what does a successful Saturday night look for K-State?
Our offensive line only having 2 penalties.
Okay.
And I want to see our O-line as a whole, because we lost a lot of guys last year. And by the way, shout out to our guy Cooper Beebe, starting for the Dallas Cowboys, baby.
That's awesome.
But I want to see our O-line play together as a unit, because if we have any questions, that would be the question, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. We got a few faces in there, guys that have experience, but not as a complete unit. I want to see our O-line dominate in the run game and also walk away with limited penalties. And if our O-line can come together like I know they can, it's going to be a great year for us and our quarterbacks and the backs and receivers.
I'm glad you talked about the offensive line, because that's where I was going to go next. I'm also on board with you there. I want to see how the rotations work, because we have an idea of who is going to start. And it's going to be, Taylor Potier. Yeah. It's going to be Carver Willis. Those are the 2 guys that you remember, along with Hadley Panzer, the captain on this team. Those are the 3 guys. But then you've got some newer guys in there, and Sam Hecht at center, and Easton Kilty, the transfer from FCS North Dakota. Yep. So how are those guys going to fit in with the guys who have played a lot of football on the line? And that to me is almost just as interesting, because, it's kind of easier to plug in a left tackle because they have one responsibility. It's, hey, if you're pass blocking, you're protecting the blind side of the quarterback, and you're either going to be at the point of attack if we're running your way, or if we're running the other way, just make sure nobody chases it down from the backside. At the center position, though, it's completely different, because you have to be the quarterback of the offensive line. And I'm interested to see how that goes, because very rarely do we see younger players take the reins at center? But here we are with Sam Hecht, a third-year player now has the opportunity to, take that starting job, a former walk-on.
Yeah.
The center is the most hard position on the offensive line.
I agree. You hit it on the head with that, Cole. It's one of those things where the center is a quarterback of the offensive line. And I'm curious to see if UT Martin bring a lot of pressure, and it won't be man pressure. It'll be zone pressure because they know the weapons that K-State have. I don't see any team playing a lot of man against K-State. If they do, kudos to them because I wouldn't do it. That's stupid if you ask me. But I think UT Martin's going to show a lot of pressure and see if they can confuse our O-line, but more zone blitzes, different drops, and see if our O-line picks up and communicate well to keep Avery safe and give him time in the pocket. So it will be a challenge, but I'm hoping our guys be up for it.
I'm thinking that UT Martin is going to play a lot of zone, which to me opens up the area for Garrett Oakley at the tight end spot to kind of just sit in the middle of the field. Same thing with Keegan Johnson, work on those under routes, sit in the middle of the field, because the odds of you getting open in a zone, if you just sit there in the middle of the field, find the soft spot, it's going to be fairly high. And on top of that, they're not going to want to play man because Avery Johnson just might run all day in the pocket if they decide to play man defense. As far as Kansas State's defense goes, Monty, what are you looking forward to seeing? Because I know we've talked about those defensive ends already, but this defense, they return a lot of starters, and I think people are talking about Avery, rightfully so, but they're not talking about this defense. This defense has a chance to be extremely good.
I think, man, and like I talked about the DNs a little bit before. I want to see the interior D-line, see who steps up, makes plays. But also, our linebacking core, man, they're not a bunch of flashy guys. They're a bunch of old school, lunch pail, hit you in the mouth. They're going to line up right. They're not going to make any mental errors. They're not going to flash at times. They can, but not a whole lot. But when they get to the ball in contact, you feel them, and they fill their gaps. They understand the drops. They communicate well. And it's one of those things where there's so many of them, and there's not a whole lot of drop-off. So as a whole, I want that lynch mob mentality right off the bat. I want our guys hitting UT Martin every play. Not saying ending guys' careers, but guys limping out the field thinking, I don't want to play that defense ever again. I want a all-out effort. I want to hear pads popping, guys flying around, communicating, and having fun. Because when our guys are having fun and communicating, they're playing the best ball.
And I think for K-State, this is going to kick off the chip on the shoulder mentality, because it just seems like every year K-State has their chip on their shoulder. And that's why I'm not worried about this game as we kind of head towards our predictions. That's why I'm not worried about this game, because it just seems like K-State doesn't overlook these teams. But this just serves as all right, we're going to put the ball in the tee and we're going to work on our things. We're not going to try and hit it over the fence, because hitting a home run on a tee, to make a baseball analogy here, does no good. But we can work on things by hitting off the tee, and we're going to swing our hardest, and you're going to feel it, because this K-State team is going to come out ready to play with a chip on their shoulder. It's going to be electric, and I just have a great feeling about this game, Monty. We'll get into our predictions here, but I'm just so excited because I feel like the energy is going to be there.
It will be, man. I know our guys are tired of hitting each other. I know our guys are ready. The students are back in town. I know you're not in Manhattan right now, but it's been a good summer, but a stressful summer. It's been a lot of road construction, frustration, and that's getting better slowly but surely. And if you're listening, guys, the construction should be out of the way game day, so no worries. You should have a smooth path to the bill. But I think our guys understand what's at hand, because they look at the media and they know it's a 12-team playoff, and they understand you win the Big 12, you're in. If you finish second, if you lose the Big 12 championship, the possibility is still there, but it's not as high as it could be. So they see what's at hand. But also, too, our guys have so many things motivating them. A lot of the writers picked Utah to win the conference, which is fine. They're a quality team. But for me as a former player, and if I was in the curtain, I'm like, how do you pick a team that was in the Pac-12 last year that didn't play the Big 12 conference schedule to win it? I get it. They're quality. I'm not knocking it. They played quality football, but that would kind of upset me also. And then the fact that no K-State player was preseason position-wise in anything, slap in the face, and use it as motivation. So they might not say it out loud, and they're going to let the pads do the talking, but I guarantee that's a little more incentive for the Cats. So I think they're going to be okay.
Yeah, I agree. Let's get into our predictions here. We'll start with the game, and then we'll wrap it up and see what the season predictions here. The spread, the last time I looked for this game, was Kansas State minus 36. if I was a betting man, I actually really like that spread. I think K-State's going to cover this spread. They're going to come out like we've talked about and outlined. They're going to come out firing on all cylinders. We're going to see some big plays on the offense. They might not show a lot, but I think K-State's going to use their speed. I think they're a really fast team this year on offense. Look for some big plays. I think K-State's going to get over that 50 mark. I'll say 56-10.
Gosh dang, you took my score, not 10. I'm saying 56-14.
Okay. All right. I think that's a very realistic
14,
number. I think K-State's going to score a lot of points, and it should be a fun game. I think the game will be over probably by the middle of the second quarter. K-State maybe up 21-0 the first quarter and find a way to work some people in. Hopefully it doesn't have to be a stressful night for a lot of people in Manhattan. As we wrap up the show here, Monty, I got to ask you about your season record prediction. I've been on record on a few places. I'll just give you my record prediction. I wanted to pick K-State to go 12-0, but I realized that's very hard to do in today's age of college football. I also wanted to pick K-State to go 11-1, but then I realized, well, where am I going to pick them to lose? So I haven't figured out where they're going to lose yet, but for the sole purpose of this exercise, I will pick K-State to go 11-1 and win the Big 12 championship game. That is my record prediction. Monty, where are you at?
Man, I'm with you. Looking at the schedule and me not being a homer, me not being biased, it's hard. I can see us going 12-0 with the talent we have. But like you said, it's difficult to go 12-0 in any conference. And I'm with you. I say 11-1. I don't know who we would lose to, but I just to be realistic, 11-1 and win the Big 12. I see us playing Utah in the championship.
Yeah, I think Utah could be there, but it also wouldn't surprise me, Monty, if another team sneaks in there. I don't know. The Big 12 is going to be sneaky good this year. It's going to be a fun season. We're both usually I'm a little bit behind you, but I'm on the hype train this year. I've been on it since April. You're on it. We're all on it. It's all right. It's okay. It's going to be a great season. We're going to be here to talk about it every single Friday. You've been listening to the Friday walkthrough here at Go PowerCat. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. Monty, appreciate it as always, my friend. We'll be back next week.
Thank you for watching the Friday walkthrough, sponsored by Riverbank Brewing. This has been a GoPowerCat.com and Spirit Street production.